Hi, I'm Scott Knox from Cincinnati, Ohio. My pronouns are he and him, and I identify as a cisgendered male. I came to Cincinnati in 1980, actually for a one-year master's program at the medical college, and I've just stayed, even though my intention was to be back in New Jersey living my life by 1981. It was after law school. It was probably about 1986 because I was working in a law firm. I had just graduated law school. And towards the late 80s, there were more and more people with AIDS. And since I was actively in the gay community and involved with Stonewall Cincinnati and getting very involved, people would ask me to help them with their partner who had HIV, and there used to be a whole wing at the UC hospital that was for people with AIDS, so I would be going up there. So I started identifying as gay back then. It's funny, I still remember the first time where I thought, I just need to come out. My law partner, I was doing mainly asbestos litigation with a law firm, union side labor law firm, so progressive firm. And the partner that I was doing the work with came into me and shut the door and said, I don't give a shit about this, but I just need you to know the waitress downstairs in the restaurant is telling everyone that she saw you at a gay bar. And it would have been the doc. So I told her, I said, yeah, I'm gay, I'm going out. And I thought, you know what? I need to take the power away from that. And I'm not angry with her for telling people. It was a little snarky because she wasn't telling me. She was telling everybody else but me. But I thought, I just need to tell everyone. So I met with the partners. And, people say coming out like you do it one time and thank God that's done. I just brought my car up. I have an old Malibu convertible. It's getting some major service. And when the guy asked me, what kind of law do you do? I'm coming out again. Because when I say I do a lot of LGBTQ legal issues, in the back of my mind, I'm thinking, are you going to be a jerk? Am I now telling you something that's going to make you upset with me so that you're going to do a lousy job on my car? So I'm 66 years old and still coming out and wondering what the repercussions will be. Because at the point that I started doing that, and many of those issues were in the paper, so there was no way not to come out. So at the time I was doing LGBTQ legal issues, I was out or in that process, whatever that means. I went to University of Cincinnati Collegeville. I went to the medical college for a master's in occupational disease. And then I went to the law school after that, actually thinking I was going to be an OSHA lawyer because I had the background in occupational disease. And I had the good fortune of knowing Eula Bingham, who was the head of OSHA under Carter, and she was the director of graduate studies at the UC Medical College. So I was whining to her about how bored I was being an industrial hygiene intern. I've always been idealistic, and I wanted to be helping workers. And when I was an industrial hygiene intern at GM, it became apparent to me that I wasn't really there to help the workers so much as to show that GM was doing everything they could to document what was there and to try to control things. So I whined to Eula Bingham about it. She said, "Did you ever think of being a lawyer? OSHA could use scientists who were lawyers." And I thought, okay. So I applied quickly and got into law school within 9 months probably of when it first occurred to me that I may want to be a lawyer. Yeah, I did asbestos litigation for years, and that was very tied in to my degree. But yeah, after that, it really became LGBTQ issues. And I do throughout that time, I've done a lot of Social Security, disability, and SSI because of my medical background. Until I started coming out, which was my last year in law school, I didn't really know how Cincinnati dealt with gay people because I wasn't involved in the situation. As I became more and more involved, especially with the legal aspects, because as a lawyer in Cincinnati doing LGBTQ issues, people would come to me with the issues. I could see a lot of problems. Stephen O'Banion was someone we represented, my law partner and I, about 1990, who was arrested at 2 a.m. for jaywalking near a gay bar in Cincinnati. Now, really, jaywalking at 2 a.m. is not a big problem. So he was targeted because he was near a gay bar. And we saw more, I saw that kind of routinely. And a lot of people may not remember them because it's been so long ago, but the park cases. Stonewall Cincinnati, I was on the board, and we put together a pamphlet that we handed out to men meeting men in the parks, because we wanted to tell them to be safe, but also to tell them it's absolutely legal to meet men in the parks. It's your right to go there. You can meet other people if you want. Many of the men that did that were married and didn't want to go to a gay bar because they didn't want to be spotted there. I wasn't here in the early 70s when Pride really started up. Probably my first Cincinnati Pride would have been about 1987 or 1988, because it would have been when I was getting involved with Stonewall Cincinnati. And it would have been, back in those days, we would march through relatively empty streets downtown with a few confused shoppers looking at us, or maybe yelling fag or something. But there weren't many of us. Maybe, my memory of it is maybe 50 people marching. And then would end up at Fountain Square and have a rally there with some speeches. Oh, every year since I started. I don't think I've missed one Pride since I started going. Pride's changed a lot over the years. Early on, it was downtown and kind of lonely. And then in later years, we went to the park in Clifton, to Burnett Woods, which was great. And to me, those were some of the best years, because we would have a rally up in Burnett Woods, and then we would have a parade that went down Ludlow Avenue and into Northside. So, and Northside was always such a gay haven that, as you were coming, I always drove in it because I have a cool old car, or walked in it with different groups. I never spectated. But as you were coming into Northside, there would be a big cheer, and by Burnett Woods, there would be some people, and then it would kind of dwindle. And then when you got into Northside, it was like you were entering home. So those were great years. I was not really in favor of moving it to downtown when they did, but in retrospect, I think it was a great idea, and the crowds now are so much bigger. I thought nobody would come, and I thought Northside should be home for it, and they had the rally in the park in Northside, and it just fits so well. But it's turned out great having it downtown. It absolutely outgrew the size of the neighborhood for Northside because there were so many more people. Yeah, and now downtown on a longer route, the spectators are packing the sidewalks all the way along. Yeah, and it's more corporate, which I know there are some people with misgivings about that, but I think that's part of the goal. It's not the only goal, but having broad acceptance is, yay, throw money at the gay community, American Express or whoever. I'm fine with that.
I love hearing everybody's different perspectives. I'm sure you know how much.
Oh, yeah, well, and they're valid. Yeah, I totally get. I'm a Libra, so I'm understanding all the sides. So I totally get all the sides of it. I just think sometimes instead of this or that, you can do this and that. And I was just talking to someone about it yesterday. The way the community moved forward with gay rights wasn't just gay activism, and it wasn't just media. It was really both, and they played on each other. I don't believe that. I believe that our biggest advances were from Ellen and Will and Grace and getting into people's homes. As gay activist Scott, I wasn't getting into any of those homes. They just knew I was some fag activist. You're other. When they see gay people and come to love them on TV, even as a fictional character, I have always thought if I had a theme is that if you could, in racial discrimination and every kind of discrimination, if you can break down the us versus them thing, when people see it's really all us, all the problems dissipate. It's all about breaking that down. And what Ellen and Will and Grace did was they helped to break that down. I don't think that would have been possible without the activism, but I think the advances when it got much more broadly accepted was media acceptance, where people came out and they thought, oh, I love that person and she's a lesbian. Yeah. And the other thing that gets missed a lot, that every time I get a chance to talk about it, I do, because I think it gets missed all the time. The fringe groups are responsible for much of the advancing in gay rights. When I was on the board of Stonewall Cincinnati, we had no competition. Late 80s, early 90s, we were all well-intentioned people doing good work, but we weren't pushing as hard as we could. And the reason was there was no one pushing us. So we weren't really pushing council as early as we could have for equal rights, non-discrimination language. And part of the reason was they were our friends and you didn't want to put them in a bad position. And if they stand up for gay rights, maybe they won't get elected. So we were being more timid than we should have been. My advisor and a bunch of other people I knew and liked very much started up Gay Lesbian March activists. They were crazy in a very good way. They were the in your streets, act up kind of people. And one thing I was very fortunate is, like I mentioned, I knew people and was friends with people across the whole range. And my friends in there I thought were great and were doing a great job. And basically what they did was they said, Stonewall, if you don't do something about this, we're gonna. So that pushed us to do something. And we good cop, bad cop the politicians. So we would go to council and say, we really need to work on this non-discrimination language, because if we don't, GLAMA is going to be in the streets and they're crazy and they'll be protesting outside your house or some shit. So, if you don't want that going on, we better do something here. So then we'd do something and everybody would say, look at wonderful Stonewall. They made this advance and GLAMA looks like they didn't do anything. When, yeah, they did, but they don't get the credit. So the fringe group goes out of business ultimately, often, because they don't get the credit for it, even though they instigated it. I think of it all the time with the Homeless Coalition. I'm with the more mainstream homeless groups, but the Homeless Coalition, I'm a member and I support them because they're the ones that hold everyone else's feet to the fire. ACT UP was the same way. They're having fake deaths at St. Patrick's Cathedral and throwing the ashes of their dead lovers on the White House lawn. That's not a mainstream group, but they're the ones that push things along. So when I hear mainstream people trashing the fringe group, I try to speak up and say, they're why we're moving forward. So, but I think that gets lost a lot because it's easy to just credit the mainstream group. For Cincinnati, the biggest advancement was when it was kind of a series of things that were all the same issue. When Stonewall, with the push from GLAMA, got the gay rights ordinance passed, that poked the eye of Citizens for Community Values. So they put, that would have been in the late 90s, 98 or 99. So that pushed Citizens for Community Values to put on the ballot Article 12. And that I have a number for here. Yeah, 1992, Stonewall Cincinnati got the city to approve protection for LGBTQ people in employment, housing, and public accommodations. 1993, voters approved Issue 3, which put Article 12 on the city charter, which said city council is not allowed to pass any law that would protect gay people from discrimination. So a year later, Phil Burris and his group, Citizens for Community Values, put that on the charter. In 1995, City Council voted to remove LGBTQ protections from the charter because it violated Article 12 at that point. There were lawsuits going on for it that I was very tangentially involved in, where it went up. District Court said, no, Cincinnati, you can't exclude one group of people from protection of the laws, which Yeah, it was Judge Spiegel who was wonderful and correct. The Sixth Circuit, which is more conservative, overturned that. Al Gerhardstein and Scott Greenwood appealed that up to the U.S. Supreme Court. The U.S. Supreme Court decided the Romer v. Evans case during the interim, which was a state that did the same thing Article 12 did. And the Supreme Court said, nope, can't do that. So the Supreme Court sends it back to the Sixth Circuit and says, reconsider your decision based on what we just decided in the Romer v. Evans case. And I and many other people thought, we won. It's the same issue. The Sixth Circuit said, I'm not making this up. That's different because that was a state of Colorado. This is just a city, and it's easier to overturn a city ordinance. So we're good. We appealed it, Greenwood and Gerhardstein appealed it back up to the U.S. Supreme Court. And I assume the U.S. Supreme Court would say, you're screwing with us. I mean, that's a difference without a distinction. So they, but they refused to hear the appeal, so it sat. So that was in 1996. Yeah, so it was in 1998 that SCOTUS, Supreme Court of the U.S., denied the case. So in 1998, we were told Article 12 staying on the city charter. We licked our wounds. It was very personal because I worked on the campaign and I worked the polls the days that we did all this voting. And no matter how much I knew that people were misled, because the language in Article 12 was very misleading. The language said, basically, do you think that there should be quotas for gay people? So it said there can't be quotas, special rights. And then at the end of this laundry list of things we weren't expecting anyway was, or any other legal protection. So the bad guys drafted it to be on the ballot with all those hot button issues. So when people read it as a voter, they say, love gays, don't think they should have special rights. I'm voting to put Article 12 on. What they didn't know they were doing was also saying, I don't think they should have any protection at all from discrimination. So people were misled. But at the time, it was very easy to think, my neighbors hate me. And then when you walk down the street and you know that 70% of the people or whatever voted for it, you think, okay, 7 out of the next 10 people I walk by think that I should be fired for being gay. You know, it was really disheartening. So we licked our wounds from about 98 until 2002-ish. And then I was involved with a group that started to figure out, can we repeal this? We met at Reverend Hal Porter's house, and we used to call them the prayer meetings because it seems so far from doing anything. But we, that became the Citizens to Restore Fairness, and we were outspent 2-1 by the religious right, but we won. And the reason I say it was one of the most important steps forward for the gay community in Cincinnati is we didn't just figure this ourselves. We got help from NGLTF and smarter people than us, more experienced people who knew what they were doing on campaigns. And we did what they said to do. And it was a very grassroots campaign. I had connections with labor unions because of my legal job. We got the endorsement of the AFL-CIO locally. Other people had connections with Chamber of Commerce. We got their endorsement. So we had endorsements from the Chamber of Commerce and the unions. You never get that. We went to religious groups. Mark, I spoke there. I would tell people don't know what anti-gay discrimination means. But when I tell them the story of Roger Estorino, one of our plaintiffs, who was mocked, very quiet, very good at his job, very private person, and his boss would mock him for being gay, would point at him with other workers and say, that Roger, he don't know if he's a boy or a girl. He would mock him and indicate that he was blowing a kiss to Roger. Roger was mortified and ready to quit. When I told people that story, it suddenly wasn't about, oh, these gay activists want special rights. It was, do I think Roger should be mocked at his job for being gay? And people got that. Religious groups got that and said, oh, that's what this is about. No, that's hateful. So that worked. And we went door to door and told people that. That changed minds. In that election, that was the same election that on the same ballot was they call it like the Defense of Marriage Act in Ohio that would ban gay marriage. Hamilton County voted down Article 12, and we were also the only county in the state of Ohio that voted down the Defense of Marriage Act. And I think there was bleed over, because I think when we were on someone's doorstep and saying, here's the issue, and do you think gay people should be fired just because they're gay? We got through all the noise and all the sound bites and had a conversation, and it really made a difference. And the fact that we had such broad endorsements made a difference. So in 2004, Article 12 was removed from the city charter. But it made a lasting difference, where now Cincinnati has the highest HRC rating for gay rights, LGBTQ rights. We went to city council and got trans health benefits before almost anyone else did. It made a difference. We have a great city council, and we have a population that was never hateful, but is more educated about it now. Pride back in the 1990s felt a little more edgy to be doing it because it wasn't as accepted. So you knew there were going to be people yelling at you. But there's something about being an embattled community, and between the gay stuff and the AIDS stuff, we certainly felt like an embattled community. And there was something that made our ties with each other stronger then. I think it's wonderful that we're not as embattled a community, although with all the hatefulness about trans people now, it certainly hasn't gone away. But I think there was a very cohesive feeling among people at the Pride parades back then, and it's still there, but it may have changed a little bit. One of my favorite Pride moments was the rally was on Fountain Square, and a group from the Cincinnati Men's Chorus came to sing on stage for a while. And there was a religious right group that was hateful and was there to sing hymns and try to drown out everyone that was speaking with their hymns. So at one point, when the religious right people were singing hymns, my friend Bruce Preston, who used to be a paralegal here, who I will always love for this moment, organized the Cincinnati Men's Chorus to slow dance to the hymns that were being sung. So all the hymn singers were doing was accompanying romantic gay dancers. I loved it. It was so smug, and it was so effective. And in between hymns, the gay men would stop and applaud the singers. And it was so there were moments like that where you felt at least a victory in a small way, where you have, mocked them effectively. And honestly, it's one of the reasons I love my community, LGBTQ, every letter in that, is we've developed an ability to be witty and smart in the way we react to hatefulness. So there were some wonderful moments during the Pride parades, but obviously probably one of the best was in 2015 after we got gay marriage, and it was just packed, and Al Gerhardtstein was there and Jim Obergefell. I was the Pride Marshal one year, 2008-ish, which was fantastic and fun. I've never been disappointed in a Pride. It's always a good feeling. And it's a good feeling to see so many more public servants that want to march, because among some there was some trepidation about whether they wanted to be seen at a Pride parade. But that doesn't seem to exist anymore to a great extent. And I think there's been not only a change locally, but a change generationally with younger people that don't care quite so much about whether you're LGBTQ. Pride felt bigger after 2015. The other thing that I noticed increasingly year by year was more and more straight, ostensibly straight people with their families, be a guy, a woman, and their kids holding up signs. That's great to see where it's become more mainstream acceptance. And it's all a matter of what I said earlier about not being us versus them, people coming out. Back along in the early 90s when we were doing some of these campaigns for various issues, I never did this, but I always wanted to pay for a billboard. I saw it in one of the gay magazines from another city. I always wanted to pay for a billboard with a diverse range of people in it, colors and genders and everything else. And underneath it just said, "Someone you love is gay." To me, that summed everything up. Really, the theme I've got out of all these many years of activism has absolutely been so simple. When it's not us versus them anymore, everybody wins. When we realize it's all the same, and if we catch ourselves thinking, "Oh, those Muslims, oh, those Jews," name your group, oh, those Trump supporters. We should question our assumptions, because I have a blind spot absolutely for conservative religious people, and I have to challenge myself on that and think there's something they're thinking. They're not just a different species in evil. And the more I see, the more I've become involved in other groups that break down us versus them. I'm on the board of the Holocaust Humanities Center now, because they do the same thing. They do trainings for kids about critical thinking and to try to express that theme that it's all us. Well, yeah, and that's let me keep my Pollyanna attitude over the year, because some people have said, don't you get jaded when you see all the hatefulness? Because all this horribleness now about targeting transgender people, and states passing laws saying that, Republicans saying, no, you can't provide treatment for your trans kid. We believe in small government, but there's a footnote. We want to intervene with you and your little family. Jesus Christ. I mean, that's horrifying. And it's hard for me to think, some of that is just hatefulness by politicians looking for votes. But I met a couple months ago with Gene Schmidt, who put forth, co-sponsored the hateful legislation in Ohio, saying that teachers of third grade or less can't talk about LGBTQ issues. And very, very intentionally, when I went into that meeting, I didn't want to just be attacking her. I wanted to explain to her why this was damaging. And I don't know if I would like to think it made some difference in how she thinks about it and educating her about what the damage is. Because what she said was a lot of the people that trying to talk to her start the conversation by saying, "You effing bitch," or something, right? Which isn't a conversation opener. So we were very reasonable with her, and she listened. So my hope is that a little voice in her head when she's going through this is thinking, do I want to do this? Because I explained to her, this is a vulnerable population that feels bad, not all, but that many of them feel bad about themselves and embattled. And the message you're giving them is, what you are is too horrible for young children to hear about. There's no way to sugarcoat that. And that's a kid who's going to be at somewhat higher risk for damaging themselves in some way. So I will never know if that sunk in. But I know she was listening, and I know she wasn't talking over me. So my hope is that that's all you can do. I didn't expect her to have an epiphany during the meeting and say, "I'm being hateful. Oh my God." But you hope that in quiet moments when she's thinking about this, and maybe someone else talking to her later, it'll resonate with that. And she'll think, is that what I want to be known for? What encourages me is Cincinnati is moving so far, so fast. I'm involved with the Democratic Party. We have one Republican on city council, Liz Keating, and she's wonderful. She's great on I had lunch with her. She's great on LGBTQ issues and on housing issues and on so many issues. If the state voted like Hamilton County did, we would have had Nan Whaley as our governor. Our Hamilton County results gave me the Ohio that I want. Very progressive and very kind. Unfortunately, there's swaths of Warren County and all these other counties that don't vote the same as Ohio. But I'm encouraged by how well we're doing here. What I think we need to do more of is, it's such a ostensibly boring issue. Gerrymandering is the answer to everything for me. If we could get less gerrymandered districts in Ohio, we would have more progressive people in office that wouldn't be talking about being hateful to trans people, that work on things that are important, like homelessness and equity, housing. There's so many good, productive things to be getting more industries into here, solar, wind energy. There's so many things that are productive that could be worked on instead of trying to make trans people as miserable as we possibly can. So the next big step I can imagine is doing something statewide and then nationally, but first statewide, about gerrymandering, so that we can get people in office that actually represent the people. The gerrymandered districts do not represent where people are right now. So I know that sounds nerdy, but gerrymandering to me is everything. And people getting out and doing something and voting. That's one thing I try to inspire people to do. Is I work mainly on judicial campaigns, but so many people don't vote for judges, and they don't realize that that's a problem until they get in front of one who says, oh, you're not the bio mom, so I'm going to take all your rights away from you or something. It's not a problem until it's a problem. So I think that's the other big step, is getting people educated enough on the issues that they vote responsibly.